Kayla stood in the center of the dimly lit chamber, her body rigid with tension. The air around her was thick with silence, broken only by the faint hum of energy coursing through the walls. Her hands were clenched into fists at her sides, but she did not allow herself to tremble. She was a warrior of the Zorvath, bred for strength and discipline, yet now she felt like nothing more than a shadow waiting to be erased. The Council of Elders sat before her on raised platforms, their faces obscured by the glow of holographic displays hovering above them. Each elder wore the traditional robes of their station, dark fabric adorned with intricate patterns that shimmered faintly in the low light. Their eyes, sharp and unyielding, bore into her as if they could see every mistake she had made. Kayla kept her gaze fixed straight ahead, refusing to show weakness even though she knew what was coming. Kayla, one of the elders began, his voice deep and cold. You were chosen for this mission because you are among the best of our warriors. You were trusted to retrieve vital information from Earth's most secure facility. Yet you failed. The words hit her like a physical blow, but she did not flinch. Failure was not tolerated among the Zorvath. It was a stain on honor, a crack in the foundation of their society. To fail was to invite shame, not just upon oneself, but upon one's entire lineage. Kayla already felt the weight of that shame, pressing down on her shoulders, heavier than any weapon she had ever carried. The elder continued, his tone devoid of mercy. Your incompetence has cost us dearly. The humans now know we are targeting their research facilities. They will strengthen their defenses, making future operations far more difficult. And all because you allowed yourself to be outmaneuvered by a human. At the mention of the human, Kayla's jaw tightened. Ryan Carter. That was his name. A soldier, no different from the countless others she had faced in battle. Or so she had thought. He had been clever, resourceful, and relentless. His tactics had caught her off guard, turning what should have been a simple extraction mission into a disaster. Her team had been scattered, many of them killed or captured. Only she had managed to escape, barely alive and empty-handed. You underestimated your enemy, another elder said, her voice cutting through the room like a blade. You dismissed the humans as inferior, unworthy of respect, and now you stand here, disgraced. Kayla wanted to argue, to explain that she had followed every protocol, executed every strategy with precision, but she knew it would do no good. The council did not care about excuses. All they cared about was results. And she had delivered none. The penalty for failure is clear, the first elder declared, rising from his seat. His form towered over her, imposing and unyielding. For bringing dishonor to the Zorvath, you will face execution. Your life will serve as a reminder to others of the consequences of weakness. Kayla closed her eyes for a brief moment, steeling herself against the verdict. She had always known that death might come for her someday, whether in battle or as punishment. But she had never imagined it would happen like this, standing alone, stripped of dignity, condemned by those she had sworn to serve. As the guards moved to take her away, Kayla cast one last glance at the council. Their expressions remained impassive, unmoved by her plight. To them she was already gone, a relic of a mistake best forgotten. She turned her head forward and walked out of the chamber without resistance, her footsteps echoing hollowly in the vast corridor. Back in her cell, Kayla sat on the hard floor, her back against the cool metal wall. The room was small and featureless, designed to break the spirit of those imprisoned within. There were no windows, no distractions, only the faint hum of machinery keeping the artificial gravity stable. She let her mind drift, replaying the events that had led her here. It had started with such promise. The mission briefing had been straightforward. Infiltrate Earth's research facility, retrieve data on their latest advancements in energy technology, and return undetected. The humans were developing weapons capable of countering Zorvath shields, and the Council needed to understand how to neutralize the threat. Kayla had been confident, almost eager, to prove herself once again. But then came Ryan Carter. From the moment he appeared on the battlefield, everything changed. He was taller than most humans, with broad shoulders and a determined glint in his eyes. His movements were precise, calculated, as if he had anticipated every step Kayla would take. When her team breached the perimeter, he was ready. Explosions erupted around them, forcing them to split up. Communication lines went dead, leaving Kayla isolated and vulnerable. She remembered the moment she finally came face to face with him. They had clashed in a narrow corridor, their weapons sparking as they exchanged blows. Ryan fought with a ferocity that surprised her, matching her skill blow for blow. For a fleeting second, she had considered retreating, regrouping with her squad. But pride had held her back. She could not afford to lose to a human. And yet, she had. Ryan disarmed her with a swift kick, sending her weapon skittering across the floor. Before she could recover, reinforcements arrived, pinning her down until she was forced to flee. The memory burned in her mind, a constant reminder of her failure. Now, sitting in her cell, Kayla felt a bitter hatred rise within her. She hated Ryan Carter for defeating her, for ruining everything she had worked for. She hated the council for condemning her without mercy. Most of all, she hated herself for letting it happen. But beneath the anger, there was something else, a flicker of doubt. Ryan had shown her something she had never expected: resilience. Despite being outnumbered and outgunned, he had refused to give up. He had fought not just for victory, but for something greater, for his people, for his home. Kayla wondered if she would have done the same in his place. The sound of footsteps outside her cell snapped her out of her thoughts. The door slid open, revealing 2 guards armed with stun rifles. One of them gestured for her to stand. "It's time," he said simply. Kayla rose to her feet, meeting their gazes with steady eyes. Whatever happened next, she vowed to face it with the same courage that had defined her as a warrior. Even if it meant walking to her death, she would do so with her head held high. Before the guards could escort Kayla to her execution, a sudden alarm blared through the corridors. Red lights flashed overhead, casting an eerie glow on the walls. The guards froze, exchanging confused glances. Such alarms were rare in this part of the facility, reserved only for emergencies or high-priority alerts. Kayla remained still, her heart pounding as she wondered what was happening. A moment later, a voice crackled over the intercom. "All personnel report to your stations. This is not a drill." The tone was urgent, leaving no room for hesitation. The guards hesitated briefly before one of them spoke into his communicator. After a short exchange, he turned to Kayla and gestured for her to stay put. "Wait here," he ordered, then hurried out of the cell with his partner. Kayla watched them go, her mind racing. Something significant was unfolding, something that had disrupted even the rigid order of the Zorvath command structure. She knew she might never get another chance like this. Taking a deep breath, she moved to the door and peered out into the corridor. It was empty, save for the faint hum of machinery and the distant echo of footsteps. Without wasting another second, she slipped out of the cell and began moving cautiously down the hallway. She didn't have a plan, but she knew one thing: she couldn't let herself be executed without finding out what was going on. Her instincts guided her as she navigated the labyrinthine passages of the facility, avoiding patrols and sticking to the shadows. Eventually, she found herself near the central command hub, where voices drifted through partially open doors. Pressing herself against the wall, she listened intently. Inside, General Vorak stood at the center of the room, surrounded by officers and technicians. His expression was grim, his sharp features illuminated by the glow of multiple screens displaying maps and data streams. "The humans have made a breakthrough," he announced, his voice carrying a mix of frustration and urgency. "Their research has advanced faster than anticipated. If we do not act now, they will gain an advantage we cannot afford." One of the officers stepped forward. "Sir, with respect, our last attempt ended in failure. We lost valuable resources, and Kayla is still alive," Vorak interrupted, his tone hardening. "And she may yet prove useful. Her knowledge of Earth's defenses is unmatched, and her experience makes her uniquely qualified for this task." Kayla's breath caught in her throat. "Task? What task?" She strained to hear more. Vorak continued, pacing slowly as he addressed the group. Intelligence indicates that Ryan Carter, the human who thwarted Kayla's mission, has become pivotal in their efforts. He is leading the development of new technology that could tip the scales of this conflict. Our objective is clear: capture him alive. He holds the key to understanding Earth's advancements and possibly to negotiating terms favorable to us. The officers exchanged uneasy looks. One of them spoke up. But sir, given her recent failure, can we trust her to lead such a critical mission? Vorak's gaze hardened. We don't have the luxury of choice. Either she succeeds or she dies trying. Either way, the council will see it as justice served. Kayla swallowed hard. So this was her reprieve, a dangerous mission with little hope of success. Yet it was better than walking willingly to her death. As the meeting concluded and the officers dispersed, she waited until the coast was clear before stepping into the room. General Vorak noticed her immediately, his eyes narrowing as he studied her. You're supposed to be awaiting execution, he said bluntly. I heard you need someone for a mission, Kayla replied, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside her. Vorak regarded her for a long moment before nodding. So you did. Very well. Consider this your final chance. Fail again, and there will be no coming back. Kayla nodded once, accepting the terms. I understand. Later, Kayla found herself standing in a briefing room, poring over maps and schematics of Earth's surface. A small team of elite warriors had been assembled to accompany her, each member handpicked for their skills and loyalty. Among them was Torin, a seasoned fighter with a reputation for ruthlessness, and Lyra, a stealth specialist known for her ability to move unseen. They listened intently as Vorak outlined the plan. The target is located in a remote desert base, Vorak explained, pointing to a highlighted area on the map. It is heavily fortified, but intelligence suggests Carter spends most of his time there overseeing operations. Your objective is simple: infiltrate the base, neutralize any resistance, and bring him back alive. Do whatever it takes, but remember, he must survive. Kayla absorbed the details, committing every piece of information to memory. She knew the odds were stacked against them, but she also knew this was her only shot at redemption. Failure was not an option. As the briefing concluded, Vorak approached her privately. Kayla, he said quietly, I know you carry the weight of your past mistakes, but don't let them cloud your judgment. You are still a warrior of the Zorvath. Prove it. His words lingered in her mind as she prepared for the mission. Hours later, she and her team boarded a sleek, black transport ship designed for stealth. As they ascended into the void of space, Kayla stared out the viewport at the stars streaking past. Earth loomed ahead, a blue-green orb suspended in the darkness. Somewhere on that planet was Ryan Carter, the man who had cost her everything, and the man who might yet save her. The journey to Earth was tense but uneventful. When they reached the atmosphere, the ship descended silently, its cloaking technology rendering it invisible to detection. Kayla led her team onto the desert sands under cover of night, the air cool and dry against their skin. The base was visible in the distance, its perimeter lit by floodlights and patrolled by armed guards. We move quickly and quietly, Kayla instructed, her voice barely above a whisper. Stick to the plan. No unnecessary risks. Her team nodded, their faces set with determination. Together, they crept toward the base, using the natural terrain to conceal their approach. As they drew closer, Kayla felt a familiar surge of adrenaline. This was her element, the thrill of the hunt, the challenge of overcoming impossible odds. For the first time in days, she felt alive. But deep down, she couldn't shake the feeling that this mission would change her in ways she couldn't yet imagine. The night was cold and silent as Kayla and her team moved across the desert sands. The base loomed ahead, its perimeter guarded by tall fences topped with razor wire. Floodlights illuminated the area, casting long shadows that danced across the ground. Kayla signaled for her team to halt, crouching low behind a rocky outcrop. She scanned the scene carefully, taking note of every guard's position and every camera's angle. This is it, she whispered to her team. We move in pairs. Lyra, You take the west side. Torin, cover the east. I'll go straight for the main entrance. Her team nodded, their faces tense but focused. They had trained for missions like this, but Earth's defenses were unpredictable. Kayla knew they couldn't afford any mistakes. With a final glance at each other, they split up, disappearing into the darkness. Kayla crept forward, staying close to the ground. Her suit's stealth technology helped mask her presence, but she relied more on her instincts. Years of combat had taught her how to read her surroundings, how to anticipate danger before it struck. As she approached the main gate, she spotted 2 guards standing near a control panel. Their rifles hung loosely from their shoulders, and they seemed relaxed, chatting quietly to pass the time. Kayla waited for the right moment, then struck. Moving faster than the eye could follow, she closed the distance between them and delivered precise blows to their necks, rendering them unconscious. She caught one of them before he hit the ground, lowering him gently to avoid making noise. A quick scan of the control panel revealed the security codes she needed to disable the outer fence. Within moments, the gate slid open, allowing her team to slip inside. Inside the base, the air was warmer, heavy with the hum of machinery and the faint scent of oil. Kayla led her team through narrow corridors, avoiding patrols and surveillance cameras. Every step brought them closer to their target, Ryan Carter. Intelligence reports had placed him in the Central Research Lab, overseeing the development of Earth's new technology. Kayla clenched her fists as she thought about him. He was the reason she was here, the man who had ruined her mission and condemned her to death. But now, he was also her ticket to survival. As they neared the lab, the sound of voices reached their ears. Kayla raised a hand, signaling for her team to stop. Peering around a corner, she saw several soldiers gathered near a large door, their weapons drawn. One of them spoke into a radio, his tone urgent. "Sir, we've detected movement outside. It could be Zorvath." Kayla's heart sank. They had been discovered. She turned to her team, mouthing the words, Plan B. Plan B meant abandoning stealth and going in with force. It was risky, but they had no other choice. She drew her weapon, a sleek plasma rifle capable of cutting through steel, and gave the signal to attack. The first shot rang out, shattering the silence. Chaos erupted as Kayla and her team charged into the hallway, firing at the enemy soldiers. The humans returned fire, their bullets ricocheting off the walls. Kayla moved with precision, dodging incoming shots while targeting her opponents with deadly accuracy. Behind her, Torin and Lyra provided covering fire, their movements fluid and practiced. Despite the fierce resistance, Kayla pushed forward, determined to reach the lab. She kicked open the door, stepping into a brightly lit room filled with advanced equipment and monitors. In the center of the room stood Ryan Carter, his face calm despite the chaos outside. He held a small device in his hand, his thumb hovering over a button. When he saw Kayla, his lips curved into a grim smile. "I was wondering when you'd show up," he said, his voice steady. "I assume you're here for this?" Kayla's eyes narrowed as she aimed her weapon at him. "Drop it, human. You're coming with us." Ryan shook his head. "Not happening. If you take one more step, I'll activate this EMP. It'll fry every piece of tech in this base, including whatever fancy gadgets you're using." Kayla hesitated, her finger tightening on the trigger. She didn't doubt his threat. Humans were resourceful, and Ryan had proven himself clever enough to outwit her once before. But she couldn't let him win again. Not this time. "You think you can stop us?" she growled, taking a step closer. "You're outnumbered and outgunned." Ryan's smile didn't waver. "Maybe. But I'm betting you don't want to risk losing your only chance to capture me alive." His words hit their mark. Kayla glanced at her team, who were still engaged in battle outside the lab. They were holding their own, but casualties were mounting. If Ryan activated the EMP, their mission would fail, and Kayla would face execution upon returning home. She cursed under her breath, torn between her orders and the reality of the situation. Before she could decide, a loud explosion rocked the base. The lights flickered, plunging the room into semi-darkness. Alarms blared, adding to the confusion. Kayla spun around, searching for the source of the blast. Through the smoke and debris, she saw figures moving, human reinforcements pouring into the corridor. "Fall back," she shouted to her team. "Regroup at the extraction point." But as she turned to retreat, she felt a sharp pain in her side. One of the human soldiers had managed to sneak up on her, striking her with the butt of his rifle. She stumbled, her vision swimming as she struggled to stay upright. Another blow sent her sprawling to the floor, her weapon skittering out of reach. Through the haze of pain, she saw Ryan approach her, his expression unreadable. For a moment, she thought he might finish her off. Instead, he knelt beside her, his voice low but clear. "You're not the only one fighting for something bigger than yourself," he said. Then he stood and walked away, leaving her lying there. As the battle raged on around her, Kayla gritted her teeth, forcing herself to rise. Her body ached, but she refused to give up. She retrieved her weapon and limped toward the exit, her mind racing. Something about Ryan's words lingered in her thoughts, gnawing at her resolve. He had spared her life, even after everything she had done. Why? As she rejoined her team outside the base, she found them battered but alive. Together, they retreated into the desert, disappearing into the night. Back aboard their ship, Kyla sat in silence, staring at the stars. The mission had failed, but she couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted, something she couldn't yet understand. For the first time, she wondered if Ryan Carter was truly her enemy, or if he might be something else entirely. Kayla sat alone in the dimly lit cabin of the transport ship, her body bruised and aching, but her mind restless. The mission had failed, just as she feared it would. Ryan Carter had outmaneuvered her again, leaving her humiliated and empty-handed. Yet his words haunted her. "You're not the only one fighting for something bigger than yourself." What had he meant? Was it possible that he saw her as more than just an enemy? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps outside the door. A moment later, Torrin entered, his expression grim. He carried a data pad, which he handed to Kyla without a word. She took it and scanned the screen, her eyes widening as she read the report. It was worse than she had imagined. Intelligence indicated that the humans were accelerating their development of anti-Zorvath technology. If they succeeded, it could mean the end of her people's dominance in the galaxy. "We need to act fast," Torrin said, breaking the silence. "Vorak is calling for another briefing. He wants to know what went wrong." Kayla nodded, though her mind was elsewhere. She couldn't stop thinking about Ryan. There was something about him, something she couldn't quite place. He wasn't like the other humans she had encountered. Most fought out of fear or desperation, but Ryan seemed driven by something deeper, something almost familiar. The briefing was tense. Vorak paced back and forth, his frustration evident. "Explain yourselves," he demanded, his voice sharp. "How did you fail again?" Kyla stepped forward, meeting his gaze without flinching. "We underestimated the humans. They anticipated our every move. Their leader, Ryan Carter, is unlike anyone we've faced before. He's smart, resourceful, and willing to take risks." Vorak's eyes narrowed. "Are you saying he's too much for you to handle?" "No," Kayla replied firmly. "I'm saying we need a new approach. Attacking head-on isn't working. We need to understand them better if we want to win." Vorak studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Very well, but time is running out. You have one more chance, Kayla. Don't waste it." After the briefing, Kayla returned to her quarters, her mind racing. She knew Vorak was right. Time was slipping away, and failure was no longer an option. But how could she defeat someone like Ryan? He had already proven he was willing to sacrifice himself for his cause. How could she counter that kind of determination? As she mulled over the problem, an idea began to form. It was risky, perhaps even foolish, but it might be their only hope. She needed to talk to Ryan, not as an enemy, but as an equal. She didn't know if he would listen, but she had to try. Anything was better than returning home in disgrace. The next day, Kayla gathered her team and laid out her plan. "We're going back," she said, her voice steady. "But this time we're not attacking, we're negotiating." Torrin frowned. "Negotiating with humans? That's insane. It's our only chance, Kayla insisted. If we keep fighting, we'll lose. Both sides will. There has to be another way. Lyra spoke up, her tone cautious. Even if you're right, do you really think they'll trust us? They won't, Kayla admitted. But maybe, if I can get Ryan to listen, we can find common ground. Her team exchanged uneasy glances but ultimately agreed to follow her lead. They had come this far. They had no choice but to see it through. That night, Kayla prepared for the journey ahead. She left behind her weapons, taking only a small communicator and a device designed to broadcast a signal of surrender. It was a gesture of goodwill, though she doubted the humans would see it that way. Still, it was a start. When they reached Earth, Kayla approached the base alone, her hands raised in a sign of peace. The guards spotted her immediately, their rifles trained on her as she walked forward. She stopped a safe distance away and called out, "I'm here to speak with Ryan Carter. Tell him it's important." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the gates opened and Ryan appeared, flanked by several soldiers. His expression was wary but curious. "What do you want?" he asked, his voice cold. "I want to talk," Kayla replied. "Not as enemies, but as people trying to protect what matters most." Ryan studied her for a long moment before nodding. "Fine, but if this is a trick, you won't leave here alive." He led her into the base, where they sat down in a small, windowless room. For several minutes, neither of them spoke. Finally, Ryan broke the silence. "Why are you here?" Kayla took a deep breath. "Because I'm tired of fighting. Every time we clash, innocent lives are lost. My people, your people, it doesn't matter. All we're doing is destroying each other." Ryan leaned back in his chair, his expression unreadable. "And what? Do you propose that we just stop? After everything your kind has done?" "I'm not asking you to forgive us," Kayla said. "I'm asking you to consider a future where neither side has to live in fear, where we can coexist without bloodshed." Ryan shook his head. "It's not that simple. Your leaders won't agree to anything like that." "Maybe not," Kayla admitted. "But if enough of us believe it's possible, maybe we can change things, starting with you and me." Ryan stared at her, his eyes searching hers for any sign of deception. Finally, he sighed. "You realize how crazy this sounds, right?" "I do," Kayla said. "But sometimes, crazy ideas are the only ones worth trying." They talked for hours, sharing stories of their worlds and the burdens they carried. Kayla learned about Ryan's family, his reasons for fighting, and his hopes for a better future. In turn, she told him about her own struggles, her sense of duty, and the weight of her failures. By the time they finished, dawn was breaking outside, casting a soft light through the windows. "I still don't trust you," Ryan said finally, "but I believe you're sincere, and maybe, just maybe, you're right. Maybe there's a way to end this without more bloodshed." Kayla nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you. That's all I ask." As they parted ways, Kayla felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time, she believed it might lead somewhere worth fighting for. Kayla returned to the Zorvath ship, her mind heavy with the weight of what she had done. She knew the council would not approve of her decision to negotiate with Ryan Carter. To them, humans were nothing more than obstacles to be removed. But Kayla had seen something different in Ryan, something that gave her hope. Hope was dangerous among the Zorvath, but it was all she had left. When she stepped onto the bridge, her team greeted her with wary expressions. Lyra spoke first, her voice low and cautious. "What happens now? Did he agree?" Kayla nodded. "He's willing to listen. It's a start." Torrin crossed his arms, his face skeptical. "And what about the council? They'll see this as betrayal." "I know," Kayla replied. "But we don't have a choice. If we keep fighting, both sides will lose. This is the only way." Her words did little to ease their concerns, but they trusted her enough to follow. Together they prepared for the journey back to Zorvath, knowing the battle ahead would not be fought with weapons but with words. The moment Kayla stepped into the council chamber, She felt the weight of their disapproval pressing down on her. The elders sat in silence, their eyes fixed on her as if trying to decipher her intentions. General Vorak stood nearby, his expression unreadable. Kayla took a deep breath and began to speak. "I have failed you," she said, her voice steady, despite the knot in her stomach. "I let my pride blind me and I paid the price. But during my mission I learned something important. The humans are not as weak or divided as we believe. They fight with purpose, with unity. And if we continue this war, we will destroy ourselves, as much as them." The room remained silent, the tension thick enough to choke on. Finally, one of the elders spoke, his tone sharp and accusing. "Are you suggesting we surrender? That we bow to these primitive creatures?" "No," Kayla replied firmly. "I'm suggesting we find another way, a way to coexist. If we keep fighting, we risk losing everything, our people, our culture, our future. Is that what you want?" The elder's eyes narrowed. "You speak treason. Our strength is in our dominance. To show weakness is to invite destruction." Kayla clenched her fists, forcing herself to stay calm. "This isn't weakness, it's survival. Ryan Carter, the human leader, has agreed to talk. He wants peace as much as we do. If we refuse, we condemn ourselves to endless war." The council erupted into heated arguments, voices rising as they debated her proposal. Kayla stood quietly, waiting for them to finish. When the chaos finally subsided, General Vorak stepped forward. "You ask us to trust you," he said, his gaze piercing. "But trust must be earned. Prove to us that this path is worth taking." Kayla nodded. "Give me one more chance. Let me meet with Ryan again. If I can bring him here to speak directly to the council, then you'll see he's sincere." Vorak studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Very well. But know this. If you fail, there will be no mercy." Kayla returned to Earth with a heavy heart, knowing the stakes were higher than ever. When she arrived at the base, Ryan was waiting for her. His expression was guarded, but he didn't question her presence. Instead, he led her to the same small room where they had spoken before. "What did they say?" Ryan asked, his voice calm but curious. "They're willing to listen," Kayla replied, "but they need proof. They want to meet you, to hear your words themselves." Ryan frowned, his brow furrowing. "And if they don't like what I have to say?" "Then we've lost," Kayla admitted. "But if we don't try, we've already lost." Ryan stared at her for a long moment before nodding. "All right, I'll do it, but if this is a trap, I swear—" "It's not," Kayla interrupted. "I give you my word." The journey back to Zorvath was tense, the air thick with uncertainty. Ryan stood beside Kayla on the bridge, his eyes scanning the unfamiliar technology around him. He didn't speak much, but Kayla could see the determination in his posture. He was risking everything, just as she was. When they arrived, the council chamber was packed, every elder present to witness the unprecedented event. Ryan stepped forward, his gaze steady as he addressed the room. "I'm not here to beg for mercy," he began, his voice strong and clear. "I'm here because I believe we can find a better way. War benefits no one. It destroys lives, wastes resources, and leaves scars that never heal. My people want peace just as yours do. All we need is the courage to reach for it." The elders listened in silence, their faces unreadable. When Ryan finished, the room erupted into debate once again. Kayla watched anxiously, her heart pounding as she waited for their verdict. Finally, General Vorak raised a hand, silencing the room. "Enough," he said, his voice cutting through the noise. "We have heard the humans' words. Now we must decide." The elders conferred quietly, their discussion brief but intense. When they turned back to face the room, their expressions were grim but resolved. "We will consider his proposal," Vorak announced. "But know this, if peace fails, the consequences will fall on all of us." Kayla felt a surge of relief, though she knew the hardest part was yet to come. As the council dispersed, Ryan approached her, his expression thoughtful. "You did it," he said, his voice tinged with awe. "You actually did it." Kayla shook her head. "Not yet. but it's a start. In the days that followed, Kayla worked tirelessly to build bridges between the two sides. Negotiations were slow and fraught with tension, but progress was made. Both humans and Zorvath began to see each other not as enemies but as beings with shared hopes and fears. As Kayla stood on the observation deck of the Zorvath ship, watching the stars stretch endlessly before her, she felt a sense of peace she hadn't known in years. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time she believed it might lead somewhere worth fighting for. Beside her, Ryan joined her gaze, his expression calm but resolute. "We've come a long way," he said quietly. "We have," Kayla replied. "But the journey's far from over." Together, they looked toward the horizon, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. For the first time, there was hope. Not just for Kayla, but for both their peoples.